Welcome, everyone. It is so great to have all of you join our last session of the Performance Summit. I hope everyone enjoyed the past 3 days. I've certainly enjoyed them myself. All of the sessions were very different, but all very, very insightful. We're excited that you're joining us, and within the next 45 minutes, Melchior and I will discuss how brands can best amplify their content. We'll review some of our latest data and insights from our platform, especially when it comes to fashion weeks, as we are in the middle of it. And we'll discuss best practices, especially when it comes to reaching a wider audience and resonating with them better. My name is Bo Kim, and I am the Global Director of Product Marketing at Launchmetrics. And today I'm joined by my colleague, Melchior.
I'm Melchior Merlin. I'm VP of Product of the launch side of Launchmetrics.
For folks who submitted their questions beforehand, we really appreciate them, and we'll hope that we can answer them throughout the session. But both Melchior and I will stick around since it is the last session of the summit. So please feel free to ask a lot of questions, use the Q&A box, chat to us, and we'll answer them as many as we can towards the end. With no further ado, let's jump right in. So when I was introducing the session, I've mentioned insights and data from Fashion Weeks specifically, because we are in the middle of it. I know we're in the middle of Copenhagen and the ready-to-wear women's wear for fall/winter 23, for many of you, are just around the corner.
Indeed, and we all know how important Fashion Week is. It's one of the most defining moments for many brands to increase their reach. In fact, we at Launchmetrics compute the whole Fashion Week's impact on brands' performance every season through our metric, Media Impact Value. You can see here we calculated last year for fall/winter 22, just for Paris, Milan, New York, and London, just for ready-to-wear women, the Fashion Weeks generated $588 million in Media Impact Value. And when we look at spring-summer collections, which are traditionally even bigger in terms of impact, it even reaches upwards of 1 billion. Spring-summer 23 was really close to that. So huge opportunity for impact. But at the same time, it's very competitive, and the window of opportunity for each brand is very small. In fact, we've calculated using our platform, Launchmetrics Spotlight, that 80% of the content downloads happen within the first 3 days after the show. 80% of the entire volume of downloads is happening in that short time frame. So it's primordial to seize that window of opportunity.
These numbers are super impressive. And when I look at that 588 million in MIV number, and as you said, it's just the 4 major ones. For me, that means that there is a even bigger list of longer tail opportunities and engagement opportunities to be able to build on that as Fashion Weeks happen across the globe. And when I think about Fashion Weeks, the first thing that comes to my mind is runway. I mean, we have a picture here on the top right corner. And although I've worked with many different designer brands in the past in different capacities, I personally haven't been to a show before. But I know, Melchior, you've been to one before. Maybe you can tell us what it was like to be present at a runway show.
Yes, I was lucky enough to be, that was a while ago, a year ago, at the Alber Elbaz commemorative show. I think it was during spring/summer 22. It was a great experience, not just, it was an amazing light and sound show in the Carreau du Temple in Paris. Every designer was there. Every designer had done a look to commemorate Alber Elbaz. So that in and of itself was amazing. But even beyond that, it was great for me to be there in the trenches, so to speak. I was at the bottom of the runway at the end, in the middle, with our photographers, our spotlight photographers, taking the pictures that would end up in the editorial sections the days thereafter. Perfect pictures, right? Perfectly aligned. And it was amazing to see this well-oiled machine come together. You had the photographer taking the picture at the exact right moment when the model is putting her foot down on the runway. The camera was plugged in to a computer where someone was triaging the photos live color correcting them, and uploading them so that the entire show would be online in less than 10 minutes. It was impressive to see this level of artistic chaos that somehow leads to incredible efficiency.
Wow, that sounds really hectic, but I'm jealous that you got to experience that. And I'm glad you mentioned our photographers, because thanks to our photographers at the shows and our community of editors and journalists on the platform, we, as the marketing person, get to have access to a wide variety of data on our platform. For example, I want to quickly showcase some of the different metrics that we can look at. First of all, we know what the top most popular designer was from fall winter 22. For example, as you can see here, Dior was the #1 downloaded brand by the top magazines that are on our platform in the last year. We can also take a step back and look at it on an individual look level. When we have analyzed our data, we saw that although Dior was the overall #1 brand in terms of downloads, actually the #1 downloaded look in a single individual look level was actually by Bottega Veneta.
And it goes even further than that. It's not just the download data, which, by the way, you mentioned it. We're not speaking of downloads by anyone. It's not you and I. These 13,000 downloads are by the press, editors worldwide that are using these images to write articles with. So this metric is a lot more impressive when you think of it this way. But it goes even further beyond. If you look at these just from the download point of view, you're missing half the picture. What's really nice is when you compare what brands are proposing on the one hand and what is resonating with the industry on the other. So for example, here, Bottega Veneta, and when you cross-reference that with styles, we tag every look with the essence of its style. So for example, here, the Bottega Veneta look is a boyish style. We can see blue jeans, tank top. And in fact, the boyish style was the most proposed look, the most proposed style, sorry, of fall winter 22. So almost every brand tried to have at least one boyish look. And then when you compare that with how well it resonated with the audience, that's when things become interesting, because you can see that what resonated best with the audience is a style that we call sexy body. We have an example here with Bella Hadid, dressed by Coperni. It's very revealing cuts, shapes. You've got transparent fabrics. So really celebrating the body. And that was not at all what brands had most proposed. It was what most resonated with the industry. And here's the kick. When brands look at this data, the best performers interpret this data to fuel their creative process. And so that's what happened between fall winter 22 and spring summer 23. The season after that, we saw brands understanding the need for sexy body, taking their own spin on it, bringing their creative process and their artistic know-how to it, and proposing a style that we call sensual fluidity. We have an example from Balmain here. It's still revealing, short. We have a nice revealing cut, but the fabrics are much more fluid. They're no longer transparent. You've got silk and volume is created from here. So it's not at all sexy body anymore. It's how brands interpreted it to create their next proposition. And guess what? It worked. We can see that that's what resonated most with the industry as well. So it's really that this is when you kind of capture the full value of the data, is when you use it to fuel your creative decisions.
That's super interesting. And then it's really cool to see that different styles change across different seasons. And if I can add on to what you said from fall winter 22, I think the popularity of sexy body also is supercharged by COVID-19. Fall winter 22 was one of the first fashion weeks coming out of lockdown, and I'm sure everyone is excited to showcase their body and show off their figures and celebrate. the body shapes. But now that as we kind of shift back to normal, I can see how some of these convergences coming through. Okay,
Totally.
so everything is super interesting. We love looking at some of these data and insights. We've covered who is doing the best in terms of downloads, what look is performing the best, what styles brands are proposing versus what's sticking with the industry. All these data points are interesting and cool, but my then next question is, what do we do with that? So what's the next step? How do we go from looking at the data to preparing for the fashion weeks?
Absolutely. The data is nice and all, but in the end, next week we're starting with Fashion Week. So it's not easy. Thankfully, we at Launchmetrics have a lot of experience helping brands in this process. So we've kind of identified 3 steps to that process, each with its own challenges, and each with our own proposals to kind of try to solve those challenges. First step is before the fashion show, second step is during the fashion show, and third step is after the fashion show. Quite simple.
Okay, so if we break them into 3 different buckets, maybe I'll take a stab at the first one, so the before the fashion shows. When I think about preparing for the fashion week, I could think about 2 major buckets. Number 1, the creative process in and of itself, and number 2, preparing for coverages. Once you have the right content, you want to make sure it gets out there. In terms of the creative process, it's the collection in and of itself, the show production and the content across different channels, formats, and what have you. And as you've mentioned before, hopefully the teams are using data to complement some of these creative processes. And on the other hand, in terms of making sure you get the coverages, the PR teams are working to make sure they get the best coverage at the best on the best magazines. And when it comes to some of the questions they may ask, it could be, who do I talk to? Who do I send my content to? Who else can I send my collections to? So again, when I think about some of these questions, I feel that data is definitely going to be helpful again. If we can know and have understanding of who's interested in my brand, who's viewing my content, who's downloading my assets, that'll definitely help guide on the process of who do I invite to my next show.
Yeah, we've seen customers look at that data and see, oh, wow, this editor from Harper's Bazaar in Thailand is looking at my content and downloading it and using it in their articles. I don't know this person. I didn't know they were interested, but for sure, I may want to invite them next season for the next show. So using that data to kind of fuel helps you choose who to invite. So that's the before. Then you've got challenges during the fashion show. It's the most exciting moment, but it's also the one where there's the most pressure, because let's not forget, the very essence of these fashion shows is so that we can create inspirational content that is going to resonate with the entire world. And the way it resonates is with the visual content that's created. So yes, it's super important to invite the right people, the right celebrities, the right editors, the right influencers to talk and be inspired by the show. But in the end, the content, the juice of the fashion show, so to speak, is going to be the images. And I'm guessing you know where I'm going with this. If the images are of primordial importance, then it's of primordial importance to invite the right photographers.
Yep, you definitely have to make sure you have the right people at the right place, especially to get the photos up right away. I remember you mentioning in the beginning that 80% of all downloads happen within the first 3 days of the show. So definitely speed is critical.
Yeah, so that brings us to the after. Once you have the photos, speed is of the essence.
Absolutely. So once you get through the show, I'd say some of the challenges for after the show would be making sure that you're beating out the competition, or making sure that your content is being viewed and covered within the right storytelling that you want by the editors and journalists. you're probably not the only brand showing your collection at the Fashion Week. I'm sure there are many of the other brands competing for the same interest, same articles and placements and so forth. So making sure that you can stand out probably is one of the other bigger challenge for after the show. And to add to that, probably the teams working to get the right content beyond editors and the collection content would be another one. For example, I know a lot of folks are making sure they have the right content on social media and then that they are tracking them. So there's a lot going on even beyond the major responsibilities that we think would be top of mind.
Right. I like that you mentioned the competitive aspect, because it's really the double-edged sword of the fashion weeks. On the one hand, it's the biggest event. It's the occasion to create the most resonance, the most amplification of your reach. But on the other hand, it's the most competitive moment. So you have that tight window of opportunity that you need to seize. And I realize that what we've just been saying is there's a lot of challenges. So we
It's
do
true.
actually have it's true. We do actually have some very concrete tips and tricks to better leverage those challenges. And in fact, we have the opportunity to take a step back as Launchmetrics and look at what works overall, what doesn't overall. So we've kind of been able to theorize this a little bit, and I don't want to go far in the theory, but we have identified two complementary methods that brands use to try to seize that opportunity and maximize their reach. The first one is called targeted amplification, and the second one is called amplification at scale. Again, I don't want to go into the theory too much. These are just words to explain very concrete things that everyone does, every brand does every day. Targeted amplification, it's inviting the right people, the right targets to your in-person or digital events, doing targeted email campaigns to some very specific folks, ensuring you get product placements by sending the right sample to the right person at the right time. And as you were mentioning, influencer activation, social media, trying to find the right person who's going to be the right voice for your brand. These targeted amplification tactics are very powerful. Everybody does them. Every one of our customers uses targeted amplification tactics for a good reason. They're very powerful. The thing is, they're quite time consuming. They don't scale. For example, going back to my example of Harper's Bazaar Thailand before, if I didn't know them, if I don't have a team in Thailand, whether it be a local PR team or an agency, how do I activate them on a targeted basis? So that's what we've seen. Smart brands realize that unless they have the biggest PR team in the world, and even then, it's never going to be big enough, we've seen smart brands realize that they also need to leverage amplification at scale. And what that means is very simple. It's just making sure that your assets, mostly visual content, but also press releases, etc., are available, downloadable, usable by as many people as possible with a maximized reach.
Okay, just so I make sure that I understand it, I'm going to rephrase it. So there are two types of amplification. One is targeted amplification, and the other is amplification at scale. And targeted amplification, both of them have pros and cons. They're complementary, goes hand in hand. But it sounds like targeted amplification anchors more on curation and control, while amplification at scale is much more in deriving reach. Did I get that right?
Exactly. Both are used in order to increase brand performance and maximize reach, amplify the collection's performance. One thing to add, and that's really important, everybody does targeted amplification. Smart brands also leverage platforms to do amplification at scale. Those platforms are like our own Launchmetrics Spotlight. Just to give you an idea of what this means and what this is, the power of amplification at scale. These are just 3 random examples of articles that were written generating tens of thousands of dollars of media impact value using Spotlight content amplified on Spotlight. For Spotlight is, and this is across, you can see Die Welt in Germany, Elle USA, Vogue USA. You have Harper's Bazaar again, as I was mentioning earlier, Marie Claire, Madame Figaro, all over the world. And it's the platform of reference for these editors. One thing to note is that on average, an editor from one of these magazines spends during Fashion Week every day 1.5 hours on this platform. Now, just the fact of being able to spend 1.5 hours on something during Fashion Week is impressive in and of itself. So it really goes to show that this is their main go-to platform to browse content, find inspiration, download images, and create their articles. Last figure, I think Michael and Allison were mentioning it at the very beginning of this performance summit. An amplified image on this platform generates on average $1,000 of MIV. What this means is, very concretely, if you go and you upload your collection on a platform such as Spotlight, let's say your collection has 150 images, that's the average that we notice. With a 2-minute upload, one click, you're generating $150,000 of MIV. Sure, it's not targeted, it's not curated like targeted amplification, but it's insanely powerful and efficient. So that's what we mean by at scale amplification. Takes 2 minutes, $150,000 of MIV.
That's super impressive and quicker than I actually had imagined. 2 minutes, it's super quick.
Well, if your images are bigger or your internet connection slower, it may take more than 2 minutes to upload your
not a guarantee, but it's super quick regardless. So that's really exciting to hear. And we've talked a lot about different things today. We talked about data and insights from the previous fashion weeks, the 2 different types of amplification strategy that brands can employ when it comes to making sure that their content reaches the right people with the better success. I'd love to be able to tie everything together. Melchior, as we think about all these different components that we talked about today, what would your advice be to brands? And many of the brands here are preparing for Fashion Week basically next week and so forth. What would your advice be?
That's right. It is just around the corner. Thankfully, there's still time, more than enough. So to recap, linking everything that we've said together, everybody is going to do, and you should continue doing, targeted amplification. Smart brands have realized that they also need to do amplification at scale, publishing their images on a platform like Spotlight to really amplify the reach of their collection. And what we really notice is that top performers, they do both of these things and use the data from this amplification at scale strategy to bridge the gap. And this links back to what we were saying earlier, listening to what is resonating most in the industry compared to what I'm proposing as a brand to fuel my creative decisions. And this is where the magic happens, so to speak. This is where art meets science. Of course, data is never going to be used to impose decisions. We shouldn't be making data imposed decisions, but data informed creative decisions is where the magic happens. You use this data to refine your creation of your next collection based on various metrics that we looked at earlier. And I hear you already coming, oh my God, this is too much in so little time. What do I do? Which data do I look at right away? Fashion Week is next week. So what data should they look at?
So when it comes to thinking about what to measure, we wanted to provide everyone with a tear sheet, a cheat sheet, right, let's say. So what type of metrics should you be tracking to understand your performance and making sure that you're looping this back in and refining your future strategy and as you prepare for the next seasons. We've gone through a few of them already throughout the session, and so some of them may look very familiar. We talked a lot about downloads. And we can also look at number of viewership in order to gauge the amount of buzz that you've created and to understand the stickiness of each content assets that you put on our platform. You can also look at top downloaded look, and you can expand that beyond and look at the top models that perform the best for you, to top product categories that have created the most viewership or downloads as well, in order to help you make better decisions. The third one is my favorite. It's our media impact value. As someone who uses that metric day in and day out, it's a great way to articulate the return on investment for each of your content assets. How much buzz have you created? What's the dollar value of it, so that you can make sure to have a productive conversation. Finally, number of publications as well as the publishers themselves is a very valuable information to know who's interested in what type of my content, so that you can make sure to use that information in inviting the right people to the right show, and or sending the right sample to the right people, and so forth.
I really like this cheat sheet because even though Fashion Week is around the corner, these are very easy to measure and to use. Personally, I've seen brands jump on Spotlight the day before Fashion Week, upload their content in 2 minutes, wait 3 weeks, and then look at just these 4 metrics after 3 weeks and already gain valuable insights to use for the next time around. Obviously, you're not going to get this ability to adapt from season to season in the first time around, but you need to start somewhere.
Absolutely. Amazing. I'm glad everyone could stick with us throughout the entire session today. We'd like to wrap up and just have a quick promo. We will be hosting a live demo of our platform for brands to learn more about our usage, and the different use cases and benefits that you can get from our platform. Our team should be sharing the link to have a sign up, so I definitely encourage everyone to take a look. And the data and insights that we shared today, it's something that we publish on for every season. So please also take a look, and reach out to us if you're interested in chatting further of anything data or platform related questions you may have. All right, so we'll jump right into questions. I know we've gotten a few questions. I'm just looking at the Q&A box. Maybe we'll start with the first one. Do we need to get Spotlight photographers to be on the platform, or can we just upload our own images? Maybe Melchior, you can tackle this one.
Yes, indeed. I may have skewed the impression a little bit earlier with my anecdote about being there with the Spotlight photographers. Of course, if you have the opportunity to get the Spotlight photographers, it's great. It's my recommended option because of this well-oiled machine that publishes images straight to the platform within 10 minutes. That's nigh on unbeatable in terms of time to upload. But if you unfortunately didn't get the chance to secure the Spotlight photographers for your show, it's still totally possible to upload manually as fast as you can, because again, the downloads are happening within the first 3 days. Which actually, I see that I'm answering the second question, which is how long after the show do images usually appear on the platform? 10 minutes, if you get the Spotlight photographers.
We have another question. How is Spotlight different from other image banks?
Okay, it's both very similar and quite different. What would be best is if I could show you in two seconds, because we don't want to make this too long, but show you what it's like. So it's looks like an image bank. It's got images, but it's got two big differences. One is for brands and the other is for the actual content consumers, the editors. For brands, aside from the opportunity to get your content within 10 minutes, blah, 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 and from the ability to sort of control and review the content if you are using the Spotlight photographers, the biggest difference is the data that you get. We've been talking about this for this whole session. Another big difference is that you get the exact same real estate, so to speak, as any other brand. It's not like Chanel is going to be pushed forward any further than anyone else. So here I have all the latest collections, all the brands get the same real estate. And the second big difference is what makes it the go-to platform for the editors. It's because it really follows what the editors are looking for in an image bank. It's all the content organized by order of the show, chronologically speaking, so they really know that this is going to be the latest show. It's really easy for them to follow up on. And if I'm looking for a specific collection, we just finished Haute Couture in Paris, I can filter on Haute Couture, I can click on a show, I have all the show laid out in the way that a fashion or beauty editor would be expecting it, which means exactly in the order of the show, look by look, as the designer intended it. I also have this beauty section with all the close-ups of the makeup for that show. So beauty and fashion editors find exactly what they're looking for, whereas other image banks is often the content is just thrown in there haphazardly, and it's hard to find, to really browse the entirety of the show. So that's what makes it different from traditional image banks. That was a really quick preview because I know we have the live demo happening on March 2nd. So I don't want to spoil it too much.
We do have one last question, and I'll read it out. I think you kind of answered it already, but we'll revisit it. From the point of view of fashion producers, how can we compete with the well-known fashion weeks, such as the major four?
Well, yeah, if you saw earlier, we were showcasing Copenhagen as the latest shows. Because again, it's unbiased. That's also what editors like about it, is we're not trying to push one thing or another. This lack of bias means that the editors really feel this trust in Spotlight. And so as a fashion week who is not Paris or New York or London or Milan, you still get the same sort of showcase as Copenhagen is getting right now. And I see that we do have another one.
Yeah.
Are there any other use cases other than fashion week shows? Well, okay, similar.
Great question.
Have brands publishing their campaigns outside of fashion weeks. We also have off-season publishable on the platform, fashion or beauty content. We are exploring luxury watches, jewelry as additional, and we have some bits of content there as well. And and it's happening all throughout the year. Again, it's their go-to platform all throughout the year. So outside of the fashion weeks, it's still living and breathing.
Absolutely. That also reminds me that on Spotlight, I also see streetwear content, which I find quite interesting.
Very good point. Indeed. This is mostly shot during the fashion weeks, but again, it can be in context shots outside of fashion week in the street style section.
Amazing. I think those are all the questions that we had. Our team is sharing links to sign up for the live demo as well as to take a look at our reports. So please feel free to take a look. And thank you everyone for joining us. It has been such a pleasure to go through our insights and the different tests of amplification. So thanks again for joining us and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.